Welcome to New Hampshire Energy Week 2022.
It's so fun to be here during my favorite week of the year, Energy Week.
We are excited to explore accelerating our energy transition with you through a great lineup of events.
This conference comes at an important moment.
71% of people living in New Hampshire would say yes, global warming is real.
Winter tourism is vital to the economic health of many of the more rural regions of New Hampshire.
New Hampshire's energy future is important to the Small Business Development Center because the more efficient small business can use energy, the more profitable they will become.
I love Energy Week because it's a great opportunity for people from all sectors to come together and learn about clean energy opportunities in New Hampshire.
The businesses, municipalities, and individuals represented here today are leading efforts to promote clean energy and move New Hampshire forward.
Together,
Together, we are all a part of New Hampshire's energy future.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to New Hampshire Energy Week. My name is Amanda Goki. I'm the Energy and Environment Reporter for the New Hampshire Bulletin. We are a fully independent, nonprofit news organization and an affiliate of State's Newsroom. Our work is supported by grants, donors, and readers, and we're dedicated to keeping the people of the Granite State informed about the issues that matter most, free of charge and bias. In my time reporting on energy and environmental issues in the state, I have come to understand both the importance and complexity of the topics that we will be discussing this week. That's why I'm excited to be here for New Hampshire Energy Week's kickoff event. I can guarantee that if you are at all interested in what a clean energy future looks like for our state, your community, and your family, you will find the events over the next week informative, engaging, and compelling. Over the next hour, you will hear national, regional, and local examples of clean energy leadership and how we can accelerate our energy future. Of course, no event is possible without the support of generous sponsors, including our three premier sponsors, Coca-Cola Northeast, NH Saves, and Eversource. Thanks to these sponsors, the New Hampshire Energy Week organizing partners are able to bring you today's programming and the rest of the events this week. We're excited to get started and hope you'll take 2 minutes to sign up for the events this week, including the Energy Champions Award ceremony on Friday. To attend, just use the link in the video description below. Thank you again for choosing to spend your time with us today. Now it is my pleasure to introduce New Hampshire's two United States Senators, Senator Jean Shaheen and Senator Maggie Hassan.
Good morning, and special thanks to the planning team, organizers, and sponsors of New Hampshire Energy Week for bringing us all together. This conference comes at an important moment in our nation. Like many of you, I've been watching the devastating events unfold in Ukraine. My thoughts are with the Ukrainian people who are suffering from Putin's unprovoked and despicable acts of violence. As Russia's ongoing and brutal invasion of Ukraine shows, we cannot be isolated from world events. This is especially true when it comes to energy. Energy prices are top of mind as prices at the gas pump soar, and Americans are paying more in home heating bills this winter. These price spikes come despite the fact that the United States is the largest producer of oil and gas in the world. In the short term, we need to bolster supply to avoid disruptions and support our allies. But we also know drilling our way out of this problem is a failing strategy. We must ramp up the transition to clean energy and double down on energy efficiency. As I have said many times, energy efficiency is the cheapest, fastest way to address our energy needs while reducing emissions and creating jobs. The bipartisan infrastructure bill that President Biden signed into law in November is a huge step in that direction. I was proud to be part of the negotiating team on this historic legislation. I teamed up once again with my Republican colleague and friend, Rob Portman of Ohio, to help secure more than $6 billion for energy efficiency in our homes, industry, and public buildings. But we need the state to step up here too. I urge you all to keep working to bring the New Hampshire Saves program back on track to drive investments to catch up to our neighboring states and lead the way in energy efficiency. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law also lays the groundwork for clean electricity through more than $16 billion to shore up the electric grid and more than $21 billion for clean energy technologies of the future. And the law invests in electric and alternative fuel vehicle infrastructure, as well as mass transit at a scale that will give more consumers the ability to avoid paying at the pump. But of course, there's so much more to do. That's why I'm pushing for changes to our tax code to better incentivize clean energy, funds to help update building codes and provide rebates for home energy efficiency improvements, and investments in energy efficiency workforce training. These are policies that will accelerate the transition to a clean energy economy that enhances our energy independence, reduces harmful emissions, and creates the good jobs of the future. We face substantial challenges, but we also have significant opportunities ahead. And let me close by congratulating all of this year's Energy Champion Award winners. I wish you all the best for a successful New Hampshire Energy Week and year ahead. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Senator Maggie Hassan. Welcome to the Nature Conservancy's 2022 New Hampshire Energy Week. And thank you to the New Hampshire members of the Nature Conservancy and everyone here for your work to advance a clean energy economy. Climate change is an existential threat to our environment, natural resources, and way of life. It also has direct consequences on our economy, as well as our national security. To combat this threat, we must come together to build a stronger clean energy future for our state. And by doing so, we can also help our economy thrive now and in the years ahead. The businesses, municipalities, and individuals represented here today are leading efforts to promote clean energy and move New Hampshire forward. Throughout my time in office, I've worked to support your efforts. As a state senator, I successfully pushed for our state to join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and continued working as governor to strengthen this critical program. This program has helped reduce harmful emissions and energy costs, create jobs, and encourage innovation in New Hampshire's renewable energy economy. At the federal level, I'm working with my colleagues to build on the work that we've been able to do in our state. For example, last fall, Congress passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which I helped negotiate. This law is a game changer for New Hampshire. Throughout negotiations, I brought a Granite State lens to the table and worked to include key priorities that people in New Hampshire, including people in this room, have been raising for years. And the law makes significant investments in our clean energy economy. For instance, the law makes a $73 billion investment in clean energy transmission, including new transmission lines and smart grid technologies. It dedicated $3.5 billion to increase energy efficiency in homes and to lower energy costs for customers vulnerable to energy price spikes, and $1 billion to improve the energy efficiency of schools and local government buildings. It also provides $6 billion for supporting domestic battery energy storage development and deployment, technology needed to increase the use of renewable energy sources and eliminate reliability gaps throughout the day. Building on those efforts, Congress recently passed a government funding bill that made additional strong investments in clean and renewable energy, which will help cement American leadership on the path to a global clean energy economy. We've also seen how Vladimir Putin's attack on Ukraine has underscored the importance of energy independence, and one of the best ways to do that is through continued investments in the clean energy economy. By investing in clean energy, we can have a stable energy supply and ensure that we aren't reliant on big oil or foreign countries. And as we take these steps, we must continue to stand up to big oil, which is making massive profits, all while Americans are facing rising costs at the gas pump. We have more work to do, and I'll keep working with you and with members from both parties in Congress to strengthen our clean energy economy, protect our environment, and support people and businesses across our state. Thank you again to the Nature Conservancy for hosting this event. I hope you all have a productive Energy Week.
Hi everyone, Amanda here again. Thank you to both our senators for sharing what is happening at the federal level to accelerate our clean energy future. Next, we will hear from Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, Chief Scientist for the Nature Conservancy, and Andrew Wichnia, who serves as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Climate Policy for the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Hi, my name is Catherine Hayhoe. I'm a climate scientist, chief scientist for the Nature Conservancy, and I'm someone who's worked on climate change impacts in New Hampshire and the Northeast for a long time. Here in New Hampshire, according to the Yale Program on Climate Communications Public Opinion Maps, climate change is an issue that most people agree is happening. 71% of people living in New Hampshire would say yes, global warming is real. A similar number agree that climate change will harm future generations, people who are far away from us in time. 67% of us agree that it will harm people who live in developing countries far away from us in space. But when we look at New Hampshire itself, only 43% of people living in New Hampshire think that global warming will harm them personally. Yet it's been 15 years since I co-led the Northeast Climate Impacts Assessment with my colleague Cameron Wake from UNH. We found that climate change was already affecting New Hampshire. Temperatures were rising, heavy rainfall was increasing, more precipitation was falling as rain and less as snow, winters were getting shorter, and as climate continues to change, we found that the summer in New Hampshire would feel like Western Massachusetts by the 2020s, which is what we're in right now. And then if we reduce our emissions under a lower scenario, by mid-century, it might feel like northern New Jersey or Pennsylvania. And by the end of the century, it would feel like northern Virginia. But if we continue on our current pathway of depending primarily on fossil fuels, by the middle of the century, our summers would feel like northern Virginia, and by the end of the century, like North Carolina. We also found that climate change affects our forests. 84% of the New Hampshire landscape is made up of forests. These provide opportunities for recreation and tourism. They provide wildlife habitat, they protect your watersheds, they conserve soil, and they store carbon. But as climate changes, for example, we found 15 years ago that the spruce and fir forests of the North Country and the Presidential Range would shift northward. And this threatens species like the snowshoe hare, the Canada lynx, and Bicknell's thrush. We also found that warmer temperatures were already affecting skiing and snowmobiling and ice fishing. And today, we know even more how that's happening. A recent study that was just released this month shows that as climate changes, most ski areas may not be able to survive. Even with the potential to make snow, the study concludes, warmer temperatures show that only 15% of the ski areas that currently exist in New England and southern Quebec, where I grew up skiing myself, being from Ontario, would be open by the end of the century. This is a huge loss, not just for recreation, but for the economy. Ski resorts are a $500 million industry in New Hampshire. We also know that rising heat affects our agriculture and our health. For example, looking at the Concord, Manchester area, we found in the Northeast Climate Impacts Assessment that by the end of the century, we could see as many as 6 days over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, even under lower emissions, and 23 days, that's 3 weeks of 100-degree weather by the end of the century if we continue on our current pathway. That feels a lot more like Texas, where I live today, than New Hampshire. And soon, in just another week or so, the 2022 New Hampshire Climate Assessment will be released. It will contain even more details of what is already happening today and what we expect to happen in the future, depending on what? On our choices. The biggest uncertainty in the future is not how the climate system responds, but rather what we are doing to our planet. We are currently conducting an unprecedented experiment with the only home that we have. We're putting in way more carbon into the atmosphere every year than we've ever seen as far back as we can go in the paleoclimate record. And why does that matter? Because it affects us humans and every other living thing on this planet. So what are we supposed to do about this? Well, there's no one silver bullet, but there is a lot of silver buckshot, so to speak. And we know that climate solutions fall into 3 main categories. Number 1, we have to stop putting so much carbon into the atmosphere. Number 2, we have to take carbon out of the atmosphere and put it back in the soil and the biosphere and grasslands and wetlands and forests where we want it. And we need to build resilience to the changes that are already happening today. And the good news is that here in New Hampshire, you have a lot of people who care passionately about climate change in New Hampshire and who are doing everything they can to understand how it affects people who live in the state. From looking at issues of coastal flooding as sea level rises, to how climate change affects our roads and bridges and highways, and our natural environment and the economy too. So for example, there's the New Hampshire Coastal Adaptation Working Group. It's a collaboration of over 30 organizations, you might see some familiar faces here, who are working to ensure coastal watershed communities are resourceful, ready, and resilient to the impacts of both extreme weather and climate change. 2 years ago, they held a king tide contest for people taking photos of what's called sunny day flooding. It's when you have a king tide with sea level rise, no storm, and we're seeing people's homes and roads being flooded already. We've also got, at the University of New Hampshire, the Infrastructure Climate Network. We began that, I'm one of the collaborators, over 10 years ago, and now it's gone entirely global. Together with civil engineers and climate scientists, we're looking at how we can build better roads and bridges and culverts and all kinds of transportation infrastructure that's prepared for and resilient to a changing climate. We're also looking at how to take carbon out of the atmosphere. And that's a big part of what my organization, the Nature Conservancy, does. We know that skiing and pond skating, maple syrup making and snow-covered woods, all of what characterizes New Hampshire is at risk. But we also know that sparking New Hampshire's clean energy future, working with shellfish growers, working with restoring forested landscapes, all of these solutions build resilience. They can put carbon back into our coastal wetlands and our soils and our forests where we want them, and they can help to accelerate the transition to clean energy. Because that's the third big piece of the pie, right? We need to stop putting so much carbon into the atmosphere. And how do we do that? First of all, by being more efficient with our energy. According to a 2019 study, the United States could reduce its carbon emissions by 50% through efficiency alone. But we also have to wean ourselves off fossil fuels as quickly as possible. Because as the IPCC says, every bit of warming matters. Every ton of carbon matters. And the faster we transition to clean energy, the better off we'll all be. So that's why it's so exciting to see how the New Hampshire Energy Week has grown into what it is today. As far as I know, it is the only week-long series of events in the whole region, highlighting the value and the importance of clean energy opportunities. I'm very proud that the Nature Conservancy is one of the organizing partners for Energy Week. Because really, when you look at what's happening around the world, the clean energy future is already here. In 2020, 90% of new energy installed around the world was clean energy. And New Hampshire has a great opportunity to join its neighboring New England states as a leader in clean energy. The good news is that many in your federal delegation have already shown that they see opportunities for a clean energy future. And many of your local and state officials are looking to seize these opportunities as well. But New Hampshire can and must do more. As I said before, there's no one silver bullet, but there's a lot of silver buckshot. And there's no question that the faster we transition to clean energy, the better off we'll all be. So how can New Hampshire help? Here's 3 tangible ways. Number 1, set real science-based goals in the state to reduce emissions, including efforts to leverage the state's progress on clean energy to tackle the 50% of emissions that come from vehicles. Number 2, remove the barriers to and adequately incentivize home and commercial scale renewable energy development. And number 3, lead in and support development of offshore wind energy that's beneficial to New Hampshire itself, as well as to the fishing industry and to marine life. The good news is that climate solutions already have support in New Hampshire. Let's go back to those Yale climate opinion maps I showed you. It turns out that in New Hampshire, 56% of people think their governor should do more to address global warming. 56% also think local officials should do more to address global warming. 67% support requiring utilities to produce 20% of their energy from renewable sources. 73% of people support regulating carbon dioxide as a pollutant, and 79% support funding research into renewable energy sources. So this week's events and the conversations that will be had between the municipalities, the businesses, the elected officials, and the environmental groups, they stand on a solid basis of public support. And they're an essential step towards a clean energy future for all of us. Why? Because even as climate change affects all of us, climate solutions benefit all of us. That's why to care about climate change, you could be a skier or somebody who ice fishes or snowmobiles. You could be a business person or a homeowner. You could be somebody who loves maple syrup or hiking or birding. Or you could just be someone who wants to live their life and bring up their kids in the state that they love. The bottom line is, to care about climate change and to support climate solutions, we only have to be one thing, and that is a human being living on planet Earth.
Hello, New Hampshire! My name is Andrew Wishnia, and I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Climate Policy at the U.S. Department of Transportation. It's so great to be here with all of you here as we mark New Hampshire Energy Week. I spend my days thinking about how we can ensure that our transportation system tackles the climate crisis and trying to build a safer, cleaner, more resilient, and more modern system. So I'm just so grateful for your partnership in that effort. The Biden-Harris administration knows that climate change is a defining challenge of our time. At the beginning of his term, the president set an ambitious, science-driven target that all of you know about to cut U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030 and reach net zero economy-wide emissions by 2050. To avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis and to build a thriving American clean energy future, our policies at the Department of Transportation and across the government can and must achieve that goal. The transportation sector is responsible for more climate pollution at this point than any other sector of the American economy, which means that the transportation system can and must be a huge part of building a cleaner future. The transition to a cleaner economy means millions of good-paying American jobs, retrofitting existing infrastructure assets, building new infrastructure, particularly for transit, rail, bikes, and pedestrians, making infrastructure more resilient, installing electric vehicle chargers, manufacturing electric vehicles, and so much more. It means cleaner air, healthier communities, and transportation systems that work better for people. So here's what we're doing at DOT to get there. And we need your help. In November, Congress passed the historic Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that provides a once-in-a-generation opportunity to meet this consequential moment and build a better future. This law can help millions of jobs and fix and modernize our transportation system, and it can help us prepare for and address climate change. People will be able to leave their cars at home thanks to huge investments in transit, passenger rail, and active transportation. On transit, it's the largest federal investment in public transit in American history. The law allocates up to $7.5 billion for EV charging infrastructure that can help automakers establish a strong domestic supply chain and build a network of 500,000 EV chargers all over the country, especially in rural areas where people stand to save the most money on gas. But we also must make sure that the dollars in every program are being used on projects that improve our infrastructure in climate-friendly ways. And we'll look to you to ensure that New Hampshire does the same. In addition to bipartisan infrastructure law implementation, the Department of Transportation is also seeking to reduce greenhouse gas pollution through existing resources and authorities. Some of those initiatives are department-wide. For example, we're ensuring that climate is a consideration when awarding funding under discretionary grant programs. And transportation modal administrations are also taking action specific to their purviews. For instance, the Federal Highway Administration issued new guidance to help states use their existing transportation rights-of-way to host transmission lines, build renewable energy projects, and support EV charging infrastructure. In addition to those climate rights-of-way initiatives, the Federal Aviation Administration released an updated aviation climate action plan, laying out key actions across government to help address the climate impacts of aviation. NHTSA released updated CAFE standards that will drive down the fossil fuel use of internal combustion engines. And the Federal Transit Administration is leading a Sustainable Transit for a Healthy Planet challenge, encouraging transit agencies to develop climate action strategies with measurable goals to achieve greenhouse gas emission targets. And there's even more great work to come. But even as we work to reduce climate emissions, we also need to make our systems more resilient against the climate change we're experiencing right now. And the need is everywhere, as you all are well aware. We see it in the sections of California's Highway 1 that fell into the ocean, in the Gulf Coast flooding that halted rail service after Hurricane Harvey. We see it in the floods in Michigan, the wildfires in California, the deadly snowstorm in Texas, the I-5 buckling in the Pacific Northwest, and increased risks of flooding and heat waves here in New Hampshire. As of October of last year, climate disasters had already cost the U.S. more than $100 billion in 2021 alone. But here's the good news. We have strategies available to make our infrastructure more resilient right now, including building better or retrofitting existing infrastructure, including through the use of nature-based solutions, adding redundancy to routes by building new resilient and climate-smart connections, and relocating transportation assets to less vulnerable locations. And DOT is working to incentivize and implement these strategies. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law will support these types of investments, with $8.7 billion, for instance, for the Formula and Competitive Resilience Grants in the PROTECT program. In addition, the Federal Aviation Administration is developing a national airport strategy to provide a top-down framework for investments in resilient airport infrastructure. The Federal Highway Administration has partnered with more than 50 pilot project teams across the country to conduct climate change vulnerability assessments and analyze options for improving resilience. And the Federal Transit Administration has developed a tool to enable transit agencies to conduct risk-weighted cost-benefit analysis for proposed resilience projects. Achieving our climate goals will require not only every modal administration within the Department of Transportation, it will require all of us. And DOT will take all of the help we can get. We need data on what strategies are working. We need new ideas, new techniques, and new technologies to improve and deploy climate-friendly transportation options. We need partners who are willing to support and push us to ensure we're doing everything we can to avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis and build a better, cleaner transportation system. We need states to show the way. We need New Hampshire to show the way. We need all of you. Thank you so much for all of your work thus far. And we look forward to continuing this important work together. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Hayhoe and Deputy Assistant Secretary Wishnia, for those inspiring remarks. Our next speaker will focus on a critically important part of our clean energy future, ensuring we build it in an equitable and just way. Eric Hangin is a Senior Research Fellow for the University of New Hampshire's Center for Impact Finance. Eric has worked in community development for more than 20 years. He is currently the principal of I² Community Development Consulting.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Hangin from the Center for Impact Finance at the Carsey School of Public Policy, University of New Hampshire, and happy to be presenting for New Hampshire Energy Week on building the clean energy justice ecosystem. We have a white paper that we've just published. Here we go. Called Clean Energy Project Development for Low-Income Communities, Strengthening the Ecosystem for Delivering Solar Energy and Deep Efficiency Retrofits, which you can find on our website. It's based on a lot of research we've done, 80 interviews with different clean energy project developers, lenders, investors, funders, several large conference events in collaboration with the Federal Reserve Bank system, focus groups, and a training program that we've been running on solar lending that has served 117 community-based lenders to date. So I'm just going to kind of summarize really quickly some of the big highlights from that research for you. First of all, what we learned is that communities and mission-driven clean energy project developments are usually seeking more than just building solar energy. They're also trying to create jobs for residents, reduce energy cost burdens, promote climate resilience or environmental justice, or help communities have greater control over their own energy resources. The pictures here are from some volunteer work I did in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria passed through, and where all of these concerns were present in that community. Folks wanted good jobs, which had been missing in that community. They were paying very high prices for power, yet not getting reliable power. They were experiencing disproportionate impacts from climate change, obviously as happened with the storm. And they were trying to have better control over their energy just so that they could have more reliable energy and not be working with a utility that at the time was bankrupt. But these projects often face challenges, not just in Puerto Rico, but everywhere, and in many different dimensions. One is that sort of, developing a truly mission-driven clean energy project involves a lot of work with the community to find out what they want and help conceive of a project that meets those needs, and often a lot of investment in pre-development costs, all of which takes money, which a lot of community-based actors don't have. And then when you finally get to structuring an actual project, oftentimes the capital stack itself is very hard to assemble. So that can include, community-based entities needing to provide a slice of sponsor equity in the sources and uses of the deal that they don't have, like money that they have to, their own cash they have to put in and they don't have it. Solar projects in particular often use investment tax credits, and those have to be sold usually to investors, and investors are often not interested in buying them for small community-driven projects. They usually want to buy, investment tax credits related to really big utility scale solar or offshore wind projects. The projects often need long-term, low-cost debt, which is difficult even for mission-driven lenders to provide. Then for solar projects, again, you have people buying them, you're basically trying to provide power to low-income families. And so the investors can often be skittish about whether those low-income families will pay their bills, although there is actually quite a bit of evidence that they do for energy. And then there can be regulatory and barriers related to just the grid, where sometimes if you're trying to build a solar project, it can be hard to interconnect with the grid in low-income communities because the grid itself has been underinvested in that area. For the developers of these projects, they reported several kinds of challenges. One was just raising money for their own organization to grow, operating money or working capital, to hire staff and build that next project. Sponsor equity, again, that sort of cash that a developer might have to put into a project, that is hard for mission-driven actors to come up with. And then there's a lot of technical assistance needs because this is a new area. So many of the groups that are developing clean energy projects in low-income communities are relatively young groups themselves. They could use help to grow, or there could be existing community development organizations that are interested in playing a role in the clean energy ecosystem. And they know a lot about a lot of things, but not necessarily, they don't necessarily have a lot of technical knowledge about clean energy. For the lenders in the space, like community development finance institutions or community development credit unions or other mission-driven lenders, the number one problem they actually talked about was deal flow, which really you can see stems from the other problems that we've been talking about. It's hard to, that there's not a lot of deals coming together because developers aren't being well supported, and then it's hard to make the deals pencil. For them, also obviously accessing long-term capital for permanent financing is a big need. They would love to be able to provide more soft money to early stage projects. Credit enhancement could help them, but as you can see in some of the quotes below, they're not a panacea. And then the last challenge for many mission-driven lenders, just like for developers, is meeting their operating costs. Again, the technical assistance needs can be pretty involved. And you're usually talking about fairly small lenders compared to, big national banks that nonetheless have the sort of operating costs that any lender has, right? Trying to stand up a vertically integrated lending operation. So that's a challenge. So the paper looks at how an ecosystem could be developed to help increase the volume of clean energy projects serving low-income and underserved communities. And it has sort of several different levels. At the orange level, we have kind of the community or grassroots level, where you have community-based organizations identifying priorities and projects and partnering with both developers, but also helpers. You could think about TA providers or co-developers who can help communities meet their goals. And we'll talk more about that helper role. And then, that sort of grassroots or community level stuff is getting financed by community level finance providers who themselves could benefit from operating platforms that makes their work easier. And then finally, those community level finance providers are interfacing with capital intermediaries to try to bring capital into the community from large banks or Wall Street or impact investors or wherever it may be. So to wrap up, based on that sort of quick tour of the ecosystem, if you are a funder or a state policy maker or investor, thinking about how do I help this ecosystem to grow, because I'd like to see more really mission-driven clean energy projects in New Hampshire, these are some of the sort of priorities that emerged from all the research we did. So one is investing in early stage support for communities. So that sort of planning process of, hey, what, is sitting down with the residents of that manufactured housing park to think about, would community solar be possible and what would it look like and how could that happen? Or, a tenants association or a building owner of some affordable multifamily housing, say, what are the opportunities for efficiency or clean energy here? And, what do you want? What would the project need to do for it to be interesting for you? That kind of stuff. And then supporting helper organizations and shared infrastructure to make it easier for both developers and lenders to put together viable projects. Third, providing enterprise level funding, so to organizations, not to projects, in other words, that could help build the field. And that could include both young mission-driven clean energy project developer organizations, as well as existing community development organizations who maybe currently focus on affordable housing or small business development or something like that, but actually have capabilities that they'd like to employ in the service of clean energy if they could get some support to kind of build out a business line there. I think there are interesting possibilities to explore there. And then lastly, but really only after those first three things happen, eventually one could hope to have enough of a pipeline of clean energy projects serving low-income communities that you could aggregate investment opportunities to present to impact investors. So thanks very much. Those are my remarks, and we look forward very much to hearing from folks with any questions or interest in working with us. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa Elander, and I work for Clean Energy New Hampshire as the North Country Energy Circuit Writer. I'm excited to be serving as moderator for today's panel on how New Hampshire communities are approaching opportunities for renewable energy development. Clean Energy New Hampshire promotes clean energy and technologies through education and advocacy for a stronger economic future. We are proud to be an organizing partner of New Hampshire Energy Week. In my role as the North Country Energy Circuit Writer, I work with municipalities and schools in Coos County and Northern Grafton County to create strategies and implement energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. My work in the North Country is funded by a grant from the Neil and Louise Tillotson Fund. I'm looking forward to a great conversation with our panelists about how they are doing the important clean energy related work in their own communities. Before introducing our panelists, I'd like to take a moment to thank our New Hampshire Energy Week sponsors, including our premier sponsors, Coca-Cola Beverages Northeast, New Hampshire Saves, and Eversource. And I'd like to remind you all to use the link in the description below to sign up for the upcoming Energy Week events taking place throughout the week. And now I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Carmen Lorenz, Executive Director at Lakes Region Community Developers, a nonprofit developer of high-quality, affordable housing. Carmen and her team are consistently integrating energy efficiency and renewable energy measures into their work and built the first certified passive house multifamily development in New Hampshire. We have Mary Lou Cranbeer from the Bethlehem Energy Commission. Mary Lou will share insights on the successes of the commission and talk to us about some of the exciting projects that are taking hold in Bethlehem. We have Julia Griffin, who is the town manager in Hanover and a member of the Sustainable Hanover Committee. The town of Hanover has set an impressive goal of reaching 100% renewable energy by 2030 and has made great progress towards meeting that goal. And we have Dan Weeks, Vice President of Business Development at Revision Energy, a full-service renewable energy contracting company that works with residents, businesses, municipalities, and nonprofits to implement energy projects throughout New Hampshire. So thank you all for joining us for this important conversation. I look forward to hearing from each of you on how your communities and organizations are helping to accelerate New Hampshire's energy transition. I'd love to start by hearing from Carmen about the work of Lakes Region community developers. Carmen, can you share with us some of the energy goals of the Guilford Village Knolls project and why incorporating energy efficiency and renewable energy measures in your affordable housing developments is important, and also how those investments bring value to the residents and the people that you serve?
Sure. Thanks so much, Melissa. I think I'll start with why we do this first in our housing developments, because it's really integral to our mission as an organization. So first off, we care a lot about the environment and we want to reduce our carbon footprint, which is pretty big because we're a relatively large landlord in the Lakes region of New Hampshire. But the second reason, and really the most important reason, is because it's really good for our tenants. So that gets to the core of our mission as a provider of affordable housing. Many low-income households don't have a lot of choice when it comes to where they live. And so as a result, they tend to live in housing that is not very energy efficient. And this causes low-income households to have a higher energy burden than other people. We're a landlord, but we're a nonprofit. So all of our properties, we budget for them to break even at the end of the year, not to produce a lot of income, unlike typical landlords. And so our budgets are pretty tight. And if our tenants are having trouble paying rent because they're spending so much money on electricity, then that can cause problems for the operation of our properties. So, we try to take good care to help them with that end of their family budget. And I think an important thing for us is, is really our vision as an organization is for everybody to live in a home that supports good health, whether that's financial, physical, mental, and so energy efficiency and renewable energy help us achieve that vision. When it comes to Guilford Village Knolls, which is a project that we're really, really proud of, it sort of represents like the pinnacle of what we've been able to do as a developer. It's a 24-unit apartment building in Guilford, New Hampshire. And like you mentioned, it's the first multifamily building in the state to be Passive House certified. So we were really excited that we achieved that. Because it was quite a bit of extra work, both for us in the planning and also for all the contractors that were involved, because they had to learn how to build to that standard. But in addition to Passive House, we also installed, or rather Revision Energy installed for us, a 344 panel solar array on the roof that generates 109,700 kilowatt hours of solar power each year. So it's a great place for seniors to live who are on very fixed incomes. They only they write one check a month, and that's to the property management company. They don't have any other bills for utilities or anything. It's all included. And the thing that's really cool about this project is that it was the third phase of a campus. And the second phase is exactly the same footprint, but it's not Passive House and it doesn't have solar on it. So we're actually able to compare phase 2 and 3 and look at how much energy is used and the costs that that are part of operating the property. So that has been really interesting for us. And we see with phase 3, which we developed, everything's included, and the tenants also all have air conditioning included. So they get a much higher level of comfort, and it's just a nicer place to live because they don't have a separate electric bill, so it fits really well with their fixed incomes. And even though Guilford Village Knolls 3 includes air conditioning and includes electricity in the rent, which the second phase does not, we still see it costs a lot less to operate that building. So we're only spending $60 per unit per month on energy, whereas at phase 2, it's almost double that. So it's a huge difference in terms of the operations and just the comfort level and enjoyment of the residents there. So that was something we were very proud of when we were able to do that.
Thank you, Carmen. That sounds so interesting and really impressive. Julia, Hanover has some pretty impressive sustainability goals, as we mentioned. Can you share the progress that you've made towards reaching those goals with solar and other energy initiatives? And what benefits is the community seeing from these investments so far?
So Hanover became a Ready for 100 community with unanimous vote at our town meeting in May of 2017, which is to commit to 100% green power by 2030 and 100% green transportation and thermal power by 2050. And we immediately got started, Melissa, working on a 4-part program, which we developed with some consultants from 3 Degrees, a company on the West Coast that helped us do some visioning about how we would reach the 2030 goal, and came up with 4 components. The first was that the municipal entity itself, the town, needed to walk the talk and ensure that the approximately 3 megawatts of electricity we consume would be generated from renewable sources. And we're almost there. We're just under 3 megawatts of electricity being generated by a series of solar arrays, which the town funded, that reside on the rooftops of several of our municipal buildings and a very large ground-mounted 2-phase array. All the work was done for us by Energy Emporium and then Revision, which merged with Revision for our rooftop and ground-mounted solar. Second was to implement a Solarize Hanover program and a Weatherize Hanover program to really help connect our residential homeowners and small businesses with programs that would make it much easier for them to install rooftop solar, ground-mounted solar, and to begin weatherization and energy efficiency investments programs in their own homes. And I'm pleased to say that we have over 250 households that are now solarized in some way, shape, or form. And in addition, we've done some work on our weatherized program, but we're still waiting for the state to iron out all the kinks and resolve the issues around funding the energy efficiency program. Suffice it to say, what we've seen as a benefit is that our residents are really enlisted in this program and are actively involved in pursuing these kinds of improvements in their homes. They're eager participants in our Sustainable Hanover programs. The third piece of our efforts to get to 100% green power was to help form the Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire. We're one of the 18 communities that belong to CPCNH. The notion is to launch a municipal electricity aggregation to allow us to purchase 100% green power for our retail customers, residential and small businesses. And the fourth, which we're working on right now with a group of Tuck students who've all come to Tuck from the energy sector, they're helping us to develop a power purchase agreement proposal that would enlist the involvement of all of the large consumers of electricity in Hanover. So Dartmouth College, Kendall at Hanover, Co-op Food Stores, Hypertherm, Sheridan Printing, our school district. We're trying to figure out what it would take to get these 6 entities participating in a long-term power purchase agreement to purchase 100% green power at locked-in prices that would also enlist savings for them. So 4-part program, lots of community involvement, and a group of volunteers who keeps 4 full-time staff members busy full-time trying to keep up with all of them.
Wow. And just a quick follow-up question. Did you start with the municipal projects first and then sort of introduce the residential projects?
We did, Melissa. We thought it was really important that the town start by investing in our own solar facilities and our own energy efficiency programs in order to be able to demonstrate to our citizens how to do it and to enlist their support at town meeting to vote for those appropriations as step one toward our ongoing community commitment. And we're fortunate in Hanover that we have residents that were already very involved in this program and a very supportive select board, in addition to working closely with the college. So we've seen just about universal support for our efforts for the town on the town's behalf to essentially walk the talk as the first step.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia. Mary Lou, the Bethlehem Energy Commission has been very successful in accomplishing projects and utilizing some very creative ways to finance their projects and do outreach to the community. Most recently, the Commission has helped the town convert the streetlights to LEDs, do an energy audit of the town hall, and a heating system conversion analysis at the town hall. And you're in the process of doing a pretty comprehensive solar project that will offset all of the municipal electric use and the use of the elementary school as well. Can you tell us a little about how the Commission has brought the community and the team together to accomplish the energy goals and strategies that have helped the Commission be successful?
Sure. I'd like to back up a moment and talk about 2000 in New Hampshire. There was an effort by several groups in 2000 to put energy committees on warrant articles across the state. And what happened is it was a non-binding energy, local energy committee that was going to be formed in dozens and dozens of towns across the state. So the reason I'm bringing this up is context. Many of the people in our region, I'm in Bethlehem, which is just north of Franconia Notch, population 2,500. We have several people in our town who participated in creating a local energy commission just after 2000. While that was helpful and it raised awareness and it started early projects, our efforts in the town of Bethlehem really got going in 2019 when our local energy committee became a local energy commission. And that means it became a commission of the town of Bethlehem. It's an official entity like the Conservation Commission. A select board member serves on our commission. So the structure of the commission is essential to having a robust engagement and commitment to energy efficiencies and renewables. So since 2019, we've done quite a lot, but in the last year and a half, we've raised $500,000, as Melissa said, to put solar on all of our municipal buildings. So basically, we will be fully solarized by the end of 2022. What has been really important to our effort is, as I mentioned, the structure, having a group where we essentially have community members with very different skills. Some are technical and some are very good at organizing people and then we also have a lot of fundraising assistance. The other thing is the early successes have helped us convince the town that it's really important to do this kind of work. So we're very proud of, we think we might be the first town in the state of New Hampshire, as far as we can tell, to have all of our municipal buildings powered by solar for our electric uses. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Lou. It's been very exciting seeing what Bethlehem has been able to accomplish. Dan, you have experience working with communities and organizations of all kinds across the state, each with unique goals and needs. Can you share with us how partnering with a renewable energy developer like Revision Energy can be beneficial and how that partnership can provide the support necessary to meet and accomplish energy goals?
Thanks, Melissa. And it's so fun to be here during my favorite week of the year, Energy Week, with some of the amazing leaders on the front lines of actually implementing these solutions who we've been honored to work with over the years. We try to collect as much data as folks will share with us, starting with electricity consumption across all of the different town accounts, and put together the analyses to find out what the opportunities are and what the needs are. And then go about from site to site looking at what the potential projects could be. If it's some rooftops that a town may have, we've heard mention of a few. Do they pass structural review? You don't want to start committing resources before you've made sure that they can actually support the weight of a clean energy system. Generally not an issue, but sometimes it is. If it's a ground-mounted site, what are the protected water bodies nearby? What are the hydric conditions? Are there wetlands or floodplains? What are the current DES permitting requirements? What are the setbacks? And on. We've got a list dozens long that we go down our checklist to find out if a site will actually work. And I know Julia well remembers a lot of stages in the Hanover process, building what is, I believe, the largest municipal ground-mounted array yet in New Hampshire, and a lot more coming down the pike, which is great. But there's just a lot to it, which makes it fun, which makes it challenging. And we try to consider it our business to not just sell a project. We hope we can do that to keep our co-owners employed and busy, and the electricians always doing their thing, but to really understand what that local context is, what the needs are. And very often we'll spend months with a town or a nonprofit, and at the end of the road, we'll have to say, unfortunately, in the current environment, it may not quite be the right time or the right fit, but let's check back in later. Or, maybe this was initially what folks were really excited about, but we just don't have the roof doesn't quite lend itself to solar, or the shade conditions are a little challenging, or maybe there's some efficiency measures that you should prioritize first. Revision may not be able to help you there, but here are some other great companies who can. So it's thinking about the whole picture, and based on the work we do in Concord and with local governments, we think we have a pretty good handle on what that is, and try to bring that knowledge to bear. One other piece worth mentioning is that financing these projects can be a challenge. There's an upfront capital cost. Although the long-term cost of energy from renewable sources is cheaper than fossil fuels, you've got to overcome that initial financial hurdle. And a lot of towns and nonprofits aren't in a position to finance these projects up front. And even if they are, unfortunately, they can't access the federal tax incentives. So something that Revision has been particularly focused on over the years is building a community of mission-aligned impact investors who will bring their capital to bear, as we've done with Town of Hanover, for instance, so that there's no capital cost. But there too, there's a lot of good conversation to be had. And might the town be looking to own it long-term? Well, let's look at a temporary financial partnership and then a buyout after 5 years and that sort of thing. So we've tried over our nearly 20 years in business to understand the different complexities and to develop solutions, whether it's financing or permitting or whatnot. And it's a huge joy for my team and me to work with towns and nonprofits around the state to navigate these challenges and help deploy more projects.
Thank you, Dan. So I have a few questions that I will put to all of the panelists. The first one is, what types of partnerships have been important to successfully reaching your energy goals, or in the case of Revision, to help others reach their energy goals? For example, have there been particular community leaders, technical assistance providers, or others that have played a key part in helping your community to reach its energy goal?
The power of local committed residents is something that I cannot understate, who take the time to do the research. And in addition, we've looked to a number of partners across New England and across the nation to help us. Rocky Mountain Institute, World Resources Institute in Washington, D.C., the Sierra Club, Urban Sustainability Directors Network. All of these organizations have provided us with training, webinars, information, moral support, and introduced us to like-minded communities that we've been able to talk with about how they did what they did and then essentially emulate that. So regional partners, national partners, local volunteers.
Yeah, I'd like to also say that in our town, we have a Bethlehem Energy Commission is really only 6 people plus a selectman. And so it's a very small group, but the dynamics of any group is essential to making something work. So it's very important to have a well-oiled team who's ready to work on different issues in different directions at all times. So we've been very fortunate that way. It's a very small group, but we keep trying to add people with interest and expertise. Unlike Hanover, which is just full of people with expertise and experience. So we feel very lucky.
Thank you. So I think we have time for one more question. And looking ahead, as New Hampshire works to continue to accelerate our energy transition, I'd love to hear what is next for your community or your organization. Maybe I'll start with Dan. What are you guys thinking of in the future?
Sure, lots of exciting opportunity. The sun keeps shining, thank goodness, and we get enough sunlight hitting the surface of the earth in an hour to meet human needs for a year. That's even true in New Hampshire, where, although my wife reminds me it's kind of chilly in winter, we get plenty of not just solar, but also wind. There's exciting activity happening in the Gulf of Maine with offshore wind, which is also tremendously abundant. And we could, if we determined as a region here in New England to meet all of our needs from clean renewable sources, we could do that in a matter of years between our solar and wind resources and our hydro, which has been here for generations, providing base power as well. So really excited about the overall opportunity that is before us. At the same time, challenged by the fact, I feel this every day, our organization feels it, especially as a company that works in neighboring states as well, Maine and Massachusetts and Vermont, challenged by the fact that New Hampshire really is behind the curve. We just crossed the 1% line. 1% of our electricity comes from solar and not a lot more from other renewable sources. Whereas down in Mass, it's about 20%, 17% in Vermont, and Maine quickly eclipsed us and is growing very rapidly now. So we've got a lot of work to do in the policy realm, besides the daily work of partnering with communities and nonprofits and businesses to deploy, and families to deploy more clean energy. Stories like the ones we're sharing today are hugely important. They, I think, open our plausibility frameworks and help our leaders to understand that this really is our future. I think particularly in a time like this where inflation is such a challenge, we're all feeling it. Anytime we go to buy something, the potential that exists to harness fuel sources that are literally free if you can overcome the initial capital costs. Solar, wind are fundamentally deflationary because once built, they continue to generate at a really, really low levelized cost of energy. So it feels to me like the fundamentals are there, but we do need to challenge our leaders in Concord especially and beyond to help New Hampshire really join this transition. Legislation like Senate Bill 262 would really take strides, would allow for larger clean energy generation, would allow communities that have been early adopters but paid a penalty. They can't assign those early solar powered facilities to larger offsite projects. There's some challenges that we need to work through, and this bipartisan legislation is one opportunity to do that. So I'm excited to be working both on the ground with a lot more towns and other communities, but also in the State House in Concord to try to allow New Hampshire to really join this transition and become more of a leader.
I would say we're, based on the experiences that we've had so far, both in adding renewable, solar arrays to our existing properties, but also doing the passive house project at Guilford Village Knolls. Anytime we do new construction in the future, we'll be looking at passive house again, because even though there was a learning curve and it was a little bit more expensive, it wasn't that much. It wasn't as expensive as we thought it would be, and it wasn't as hard as we thought it would be. So we want to try that again any chance we get when we're building something brand new, because it's just the property just operates so well and it makes such a huge difference for the people that live there. So we want to continue to do that. whenever possible.
That's very exciting. What about you, Mary Lou? What is the Bethlehem? Oh.
So I think what we're looking forward to is actually the installation of our 3 different arrays in the next 3 months. Once we get through that, we will start thinking about what we do next. But I going back to what Julia said, it would be exciting to work with individual residents on getting them to solarize or do more energy efficiency work. We also have been talking to the Grafton County commissioners. We're hoping that the county commissioners will start thinking about supporting the towns and cities in our county in terms of energy efficiency. We need more dollars coming for renewables, and it may not just come from the state. We might be able to work on the county level to bring it to our municipal level, and that would be very helpful.
Having spent so much time putting together a community power aggregation in New Hampshire that encompasses a number of communities, and seeing what the community power aggregations in places like California are doing for their member communities and those communities' residents, they're powerful tools, Melissa, to really push the electricity marketplace to create and sell more green power by using the demand of a large number of people to steer those resources. Couple that with the opportunities emerging in New England for offshore wind, looking at the Vineyard Wind, for example, the Vineyard Wind project off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. Obviously, there's nowhere to go but up in this part of the country in terms of offshore wind, because there's not a whole lot out there except for Black Island. So the opportunities going forward are exciting, and I think I'm energized by just seeing the number of municipal officials around the state that are actively engaged in this work now as compared with even 5 years ago. So many of my colleagues are working on these issues, recognizing that they can make a difference in their communities, whether it's a local energy committee or commission, as Mary Lou's seen in Bethlehem, or it's city and officials at a high level pushing the envelope on these issues. Pretty exciting to sense the degree of commitment to making progress on a number of levels for cities and towns in New Hampshire.
Yeah, it does feel like momentum is building for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to everybody who joined this webinar. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and the insights of the panelists, and we hope you enjoy New Hampshire Energy Week. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the program. As you heard today, in order to effectively address climate change, we must make rapid progress toward a clean energy future, right here in New Hampshire, around the country, and around the world. On behalf of all of the organizers, thank you for choosing to spend your time with us on this critical topic. Of course, we would not be able to conclude today's program without thanking our sponsors, especially our premier sponsors, Coca-Cola Northeast, NH Saves, and Eversource. As we come to a close, I want to encourage you to take a minute to sign up for the engaging events taking place this week, including the virtual Career and Resource Fair in collaboration with New Hampshire Employment Security and the Energy Champions Award ceremony at the Concord Craft Brewing Company. Our clean energy future is in sight, but it can only be achieved when all of us are at the table. Thank you again, and see you at the next event.